My name is Bilal Shala, the PCB organizer of this webinar, and today's topic is ISO 20001 implementation using force field analysis. The webinar will be hosted by Mr. David Smart. Mr. Smart is a PCB certified trainer and managing director of Smart ICO systems. Please, if you will have any question or comments during the webinar, use the question box to write your question in the right hand control panel, or you may use the option to raise your hand and Mr. Smart will answer to them accordingly. Please, Mr. Smart, you may start the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for providing me with this opportunity. Today's topic, as already been said, is about using force field analysis. Now, just quickly before I start the presentation, I would say that I have adapted this specifically to 27001, but the same tool could be used for any project at all, any ISO project, or indeed any project. So I'm just going to go on now and talk a little bit about myself quickly, so you give a bit of background. My experience goes back to the days of British Standard 5750, where I was lucky enough to be part of a large project team putting in 5750 into two large manufacturing plants back in 1979. I registered then as a consultant with PERA after being made redundant twice in 3 years, when I set up my own consultancy practice, and initially I set it up as Smart Quality Systems. Credibility was a problem I had, so I joined a large American consultancy firm working on corporate projects throughout Europe for 3 years, which gave me exposure in Europe and also a broader consultancy experience apart from quality. I then went on to work in North America for around 9 years on projects at the other end of the scale, mostly small to medium-sized enterprises, broadening my experience even further by working on other ISO standards, for example, the environment, health and safety, 27000, etc. In 2008, I came back home again and set up Smart Mentoring to complement my ISO skills. I feel often companies do not fully understand the benefits that ISO systems can bring to a business. They focus too much on the marketing side, the badge up on the wall mentality, using them as bolt-on systems without looking at the bottom line savings that can be made by improvements and in their internal processes by better resource utilization. We'll now go on and talk about force field analysis. And as I said, once again, just to reinforce it, it can be used for any project. So what is it? I've personally found this a useful tool when working on ISO projects. After early discussions before commencing the project and also during initial gap analysis studies, you get a good idea of the organization's culture, attitudes, and who is for and against the proposed standard, where you're going to get resistance. Ideally, there should be no opposition, as the business case should have been sold to the management team before signing up. But too much emphasis is placed during selling projects on the marketing angle. For example, that will bring in new business. After the initial stage, I can plan strategies to overcome any resistance I find, and also can do the analysis again later, say as an example after 3 months, when I will know a lot more about the company and feed the additional factors into my analysis. So who created this tool? A guy called Kurt Lewin, L-E-W-I-N, which you can see on the slide. This tool was created in the 1940s, so it's been here for a while. It was originally used in the field of social psychology, but today it is used in business for go, no-go decisions on projects. The go-ahead decision. It's better to do this type of analysis with the whole project team members so that as wide a knowledge base can be gathered from as many people as you can solicit information. It could also be broadened out to interviewing key members in the management team, especially if you fear the team is going to be exposed to negative, cynical attitudes. And again, it could be done as a brainstorming session with a diagram left up on a flip chart for a few days to incubate, with anyone adding their thoughts to it as they think of them. After, we'll say, for a week incubating, the project team can conduct the analysis and formulate strategies. Any additional interview notes identified when you're interviewing key members of the management team could also be discussed. And the second bullet point is an increased chance of success. Planning is a key in any project, trying to foresee problems and also identify who's supporting you. If you have a periodic progress review meeting with your team, look at the analysis as a benchmark and compare actual experience and adjust as necessary when the project is far more likely to be a success. How do we use the tool? Again, this is just a to-do list. It will be obvious when I show you that example what's actually involved. So use a blank sheet of paper or a flip chart to draw it. Describe what you're trying to achieve in the middle box. List the forces driving the change, and the other side resisting the change, score them, and then look at pairs of forces that cancel each other or drive or be a resistant factor. You'll see that when I show you the example much more clearly. I'm just going to move on now. The business benefits. Many benefits should be accrued from this type of project. Examples are more effective processes, greater protection of the company's information, greater confidence by customers that the customer behaves in a professional manner. Again, looking at the changes, the analysis diagram, and from that you'll formulate a strategy plan and look at contingencies and come back and look at it and adjust it as you go along. Ease implementation, problems identified in the initial and quarterly analysis along with the outcomes from regular progress meetings. And the final point, time and resource constraints. This project will probably last up to a year, so it's difficult to keep your team motivated. Time is always against you on projects as well as money. You must lead by example and support your team. In turn, you as a project leader must feedback your progress and concerns back to senior management, offering them solutions to your concerns, which in turn they must support you with. The costs. The financial department will closely monitor the outlays, but a budget should have been set before commencement, and if it requires additional resources, then the justifications will have to be done. Now, in a 27 process, it's almost certain, a 27 project, my apologies, it's almost certain that all the processes in the business will be affected, ranging from sales to service, manufacturing, if it's a manufacturing organisation, the financial activities, along with any installation processes. And the final point, risk management. A risk assessment needs to be conducted. For example, how well is customers' information being protected currently? What types of security breaches is the company exposed to, and are they being picked up? Using your analysis can be used in two ways. The first is just to recap on what I said previously. If you can foresee problems, then you're far more likely to get success with your project. And again, restating what I said previously, planning and developing contingencies and constantly monitoring, weakening the restraining forces and strengthen the driving forces will give you success. When I first did consultancy work for that large American consultancy group, they used to talk about technical and tactical, saying it was 80% tactical and 20% technical, which I really disagreed with. But as I have more experience, I now realise that it's in fact the other way around, that you've got to get the tactical side right. The technical content is a very small part of it. You could make the same decisions 9 times out of 10, the 10th time you get it wrong. Myself, if I get problems, I evaluate them. If I feel there's a lesson to be learned, I take it on board. I don't beat myself up about it. And if I don't think there's any mileage in the problem I've got, then I won't change the method I use just because somebody's doesn't agree with it or I've had problems with it. If I've had success 9 times, I'm not going to change just because it's wrong once. But again, as I said, you're always looking for continual improvement in yourself. So if there's lessons to be learned, you certainly take them on board and don't be bigoted or so aloof that you can't take on board what people are saying. But the old story, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. So you'll always get issues. So some useful tips. First one, factors involving people's health and safety do not fit well into this approach. 2, while this approach helps in decision making, it has its limitations due to its subjectivity. When making important decisions, it should be used in conjunction with other decision making tools. And tip 3, there are many factors you need to consider when doing this analysis. When we look at the example, it's been simplified for demonstration purposes. So we'll now go on and look at the example. So we can see in the yellow box across the top that there's a rating from 5 boxes, 2 to 10, and the left hand side looked at the forces driving the change, and the right hand one with the winey colour, you'll see the forces restraining. Now you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forces that when I did this particular project, these were the issues. So new management had come into the company with fresh ideas. They would higher customer expectations. The profile of 27,000 had been raised, obviously, as we were going to go and get certified against it. And a better awareness of procedures than had been in the past. There's also been an investment in new technology, and very importantly, and probably should have been up the top and still studied down the bottom, the HR and IT departments were supporting me right all the way through. Against that, you'll see I've paired them up, but they don't necessarily need to pair up. So you'll see that long service employees want the status quo, and because the company had many branches throughout the UK in this particular case, with different cultures in different parts of the country, it was a problem. And again, offsetting the fact that the awareness had been raised, the lack of knowledge counteracted that. And again, unfamiliarity with the working practices, or because new managers are coming in, they want to change procedures and they don't know the change procedure and they cause anarchy. Fear of change and loss of status, especially if somebody's been in a position for a while, and the companies, I talk about a static environment in companies and a dynamic environment. The longer a company is in a static environment, the more difficult it is to change. I mean, if we think about ourselves just getting up in the morning, we've got a routine. Somebody gels us out of routine, it upsets us. And what I'm driving at here is the longer you're left in your routine without anybody challenging it, the harder you will find change. I also talk about, if you don't find change difficult, put your waste paper basket on the other side of your desk, and I'll guarantee you that for the next 2 weeks you'll be throwing your paper on the floor. And the final one in this particular case was competing objectives. There was a huge drive towards sales in the company and only making sales to the detriment. For instance, in the engineering division, they often supported the sales, and it appeared they weren't making any money. The sales guys were always using their technical ability to sell jobs, etc., and there was not a service request went in to charge the sales department to cross-refer charges. So that's what I mean by competing objectives, or one of the reasons for competing objectives. So that is, as I say, in the centre, the aim is successful implementation of your 27 project. Right, now a little bit on the analysis. We'll see here that the forces driving the change in total come to 38, and those resisting come to 43. So before we've even done anything, we can see there's a 5-point negative from this analysis, which is the norm. Now, this is my analysis. The topics are my ideas and what I see as the driving and restraining forces acting on the company at that period in time. You may do the same analysis and use different criteria, totally different, every company is different. Again, you don't need to have equal numbers or driving and restraining forces, in this case 6 each side. You may not see a pairing, and it's only you and the project team that see the connection, the link in there. There might not be a link between any two forces, and it is generally better, it's a better strategy to weaken the restraining forces rather than attempt to strengthen the driving forces. So we'll now go on to look at paired analysis. New ideas versus long-standing service employees. The new ideas forces marginally more than the long service preferences for the status quo, 7 against 6, so there's 1 point of difference. Next pair is dispersion against culture restraining. The force is 10 and the customer expectation is 8, so the gap is 2. Pair 3, knowledge versus lack of knowledge. They're cancelled out. The higher 27 profile, they're 6 each, so they're neither negative nor positive. Working practices versus awareness. Again, there's a gap of 5 on raised awareness. And pair 5, change fear factor versus new technology. There's a gap of 5 again. And the service support versus competing objectives. We've marginally got some on the positive side, but there's still a gap of 1. So what's the strategy then? Well, the strategy that I've got, and again I keep stressing, it's up to you guys to make up your own strategy, and you may have to change your strategies as you go along. That's why it's useful to have contingency in case, and contingency strategies. And again, as you get more experience and more knowledge of the processes and the people, you may have to use, but at least in place. So strategy, the first strategy is on pair 4. Build overall group knowledge on working practices by working closely with selected staff on training methods, and continue strengthening the awareness by auditing and coaching. And the second strategy, pair 2, which I've reversed them round, but I mean, it doesn't matter. Build harmony using the project and the audit teams to break down cultural differences and push corporate identity while strengthening the methods for defining and measuring the customer's requirements. So that's my presentation. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance on this, and you can see there if you wanted to ask me any questions after this webinar on the question and answer session, you can do it through my email address, and I'll answer them by email. So thank you very much for your time. It's now time for the question and answer session, so I'll hand you back and we'll see if you've got any questions to ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smart, for this great presentation. As we have some time left, we will go through some questions. The first question is, what resources are needed to conduct a force analysis?
You want probably to start off looking at people that are, you've got a number of issues. First of all, you want people and influence on your project team. You want people on your side that are recognized in the company, that people value their opinions. So that's the first thing that you want to solicit views and hopefully get them on your side. If they're influencing them in the opposite direction, then obviously you're wanting to try and spend time with that person, try and see if you can win them over. Again, you've got to take the whole management team with you and keep selling the project and keep the interest going, and again get early results. One of the mistakes I made on projects was because I wanted it to be a success, I spent too much time on training and development, whereas I should have looked at easy low fruit that I could get wins, that I could feed back to the finance department, which can often be against you in projects. I don't mean that in a negative way. They're looking after the company's money, they're being counter-types, that's their mentality, and that's fine. But if you can convert savings or something into financial savings and get the accounts department involved in the measurements, again forming bases to take measurements against it is critical, and get them signed off and get people to agree on them. So very quickly, that's the issues that are involved in there. Get the support of the management team, have the people on the team with the right skill sets, especially good interpersonal skills that I talked about, tactical versus technical. That is the first side of it, getting people in there at the right authority levels and able to influence and support the project, rather than, I always see things like a seesaw. It's about trying to look at your side of the fence and get the seesaw down towards you rather than the other team. And again, if you win a bit, then their side will put more against you. So as I've said, you've got to look at weakening the forces that are holding you back, look at strategies for that, rather than forces that are trying to get you to achieve the project. So I'll stop there because I could spend a lot of time talking about that, but thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smart, for answering the question. Now we have one more question. One of the attendees has asked you how to decide whether or not to move forward with a decision or change.
Well, again, your analysis, depending on the factors that you come up with, whether it be a financial decision, or there's too much resistance, or the timing's wrong at that period in time, whatever. Too often people enter into ISO system projects from the wrong standpoint, and then when they don't get results, they blame the certificate or the procedures, and the problem where I'm coming from is too often it's so from a marketing standpoint. You'll get more contracts if you've got ISO systems, you have credibility, etc., etc., etc. At the end of the day, it's all about how you develop your own system. It's not about a minimum system and just maintaining the minimum levels. It's about looking at more effective and efficient methods and everybody buying into it and putting their tuppence into within, and the system is central to about, I mean, we're speaking about 27,000 at the moment, and I say to you that all systems, all the processes will be involved in it. I mean, we're not just talking about, we're talking about physical parameters. We're not just talking about antivirus and Trojan horses and things like that. That's why the HR department's involved. For example, I'm in Toronto. I was having a meal one night and I heard a girl talking to her friend and saying they took my games off my computer. It gave me something to do. Why did they take that away? These are examples of raising awareness or the fact that games can have viruses in them, etc., etc. And another one on the physical side, I turned up at premises and the guy at the door was and I had an electronic lock. The guy dived in and said to me, I'll just let you in, never asked me anything. I was inside the premises. Another one in Los Angeles, I went to the toilet, came back. I said, I've just gone through your server room. The guy says, yeah, it's on the way to the toilet. And I said, but I've just gone through your server room. He says, yeah. And I said, but there's no security on I could have caused physical damage, I could have taken information, etc., etc. So these are just some of the issues. The question was, when did you decide to go ahead with the project? It's given, possibly you need to measure it in probability once you've done your analysis to say what is the probability of success, and at least given that up to top management to say, look, I reckon we've got a 70% chance here. And again, when you get into ISO projects and if you're employed as a consultant, you've got a fait accompli, you've got to get on with it. And sometimes, in my case, we talk specifically about consultancy projects, occasionally you've got to give up a project and get somebody else in if there's a clash of personalities or some, but they will always start. Again, I could talk a lot about that, but time's not against that. So there are probably other questions, so I'll stop there.
Mr. Smart, thank you very much again. We don't have any other question for you, so I want to thank you for the great presentation and answering the question. And I want to thank all the attendees as well for joining us. We hope you really enjoyed this webinar, and you can watch this session recorded and view the presentation slides on our website www.pcb.com. In the end, I just want to inform you that next week we are hosting another interesting webinar in Spanish, so if you understand the Spanish, I highly recommend you to attend this webinar. Thank you very much and bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.